Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Bright Ideas e-commerce podcast. As always, I'm your host, Trent Deersmid, and I am here to help you discover what is working in e-commerce today by shining a light on the tools, the tactics, and the strategies that are in use by today's leading entrepreneurs. Now, back in episode 287, you heard how Dave Chesson is helping Kindlepreneurs to master the science of book marketing. And in today's episode, number 288, I'm joined by Mark Daoust. Mark is the founder of Quiet Light Brokerage, an M&A advisory firm for online business owners. They work with owners of e-commerce, Amazon, SaaS, and content-based businesses to help them plan and execute a successful exit. Their team is made up of entrepreneurs who have all experienced the startup, the exit, and the acquisition. Now, before I welcome Mark to the episode, first a word from today's sponsor. Today's sponsor is Ahrefs, and prior to discovering their Ahrefs tool, I have to admit, I was definitely not much of a fan or even advocate of SEO. I thought it was too technical. I thought I was too late to the game and that I would really never get any results. So to be honest with you, I really didn't put a lot of effort into it. And boy, oh boy, was that a big mistake. Now that I've been using their tool for a couple of months, it has become literally a daily resource that I use for SEO research and planning for pretty much every piece of content that I publish in any one of my businesses. If I want to know which keywords are driving traffic to a competitor's website, easily discovered using the tool. If I want to know how to improve the ranking of my YouTube videos, easily discovered using the Ahrefs tool. If I want to easily perform detailed keyword research to identify important phrases that I can use as the foundation of my cornerstone content, you guessed it, easily discovered using their Ahrefs tool. It is an amazing all-in-one SEO tool, and it's far more than just a great backlinks tool, as many people who maybe are familiar with the brand might think. If you really want to grow your traffic to your website, Ahrefs has everything you need from keyword to content research to rank tracking and site audits. If you aren't yet using the tool as a part of your traffic generation strategy and you are seriously missing out, and I highly recommend you check out the tool. You can sign up for a trial for only $7 at ahrefs.com, and that's ahrefs.com. All right, Mark, thank you for your patience as we got through the sponsor message. A pleasure to have you on the show. Welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me. And actually, I'm a big fan of Ahrefs, so I don't mind.
Excellent. So we're going to talk, we're going to do a kind of a 3-segment interview today. We're going to talk a bit about your company and the perspective it is of your company for buyers, people who are looking to buy a website. Then we're also going to talk about negotiation and closing. And then we're going to round up our interview by talking about it from the seller's perspective. And in doing so, we'll have covered pretty much every aspect of the audience that we could want to do. So let's start off with the basics. Why did you start Quiet Light? I would assume there were sites like this when you started yours, and what were you doing before that put you in a position to start this one?
Yeah, there were some companies like Quiet Light before, but not a lot. I mean, not compared to what you see in today's marketplace, right? There's a lot of businesses today doing what we're doing, but I started Quiet Light Brokerage after having the experience of actually selling one of my own online businesses myself and kind of going through that process and seeing what it was like. And I remember the person, the advisor who helped me through that process didn't know a lot about online businesses. And it just seemed pretty basic. That would be a good thing to know if you're trying to evaluate these things, right? And so I thought, well, I can do this, which is, what we say as entrepreneurs that gets us into so much trouble all the time is, I could do this. How hard could this be? And so I took a year off after I sold my first business. I was trying to start a couple of other things. They were gaining some traction, but not a lot, not enough to really be of interest. And then a good friend of mine wanted to sell his web hosting company and asked me to help him. And that's really where Quiet Light started, was helping that friend to sell his web hosting company the first time around. It was educational, eye-opening, and launched what we have today. Today, obviously, we're much different than we were back then. We have a lot more experience just by virtue of the number of deals that we have underneath our belts. But the really big emphasis and the big motive for me going into this and starting up Quiet Light Brokerage was to be able to provide entrepreneurs in the online world with an advisor to walk them through and step with people through that process of selling a business, or on the buy side, buying a business, with somebody who's been there before, right? Somebody who's actually gone through this process, both on the buy side and on the sell side, and has enough experience in deal making and valuations to be able to really be a good advisor all the way through. And that's frankly where our name comes from as well. It's the idea that, look, for entrepreneurs out there, you build a business, right? It's your business. You get to do with it as you want. And we're here to hopefully be a light and an advisor. We don't sign papers. We don't do, sign your contracts. We don't tell you what to do, but hopefully give you that proper direction. That sounds a little sales pitchy, and I apologize for that. But the origins really did come from that, right? Trying to help people out through this process of selling, because it's complex. And if you've started a business on your own, and Trent, you know this because you're experienced entrepreneur, when you start something, you get emotionally attached to it. A lot of us do, at least, especially in the first few businesses that we start. And the process of trying to sell that the first time can be really, really confusing. And then throw in all the other things of you don't know what you don't know. It's good to have somebody there by your side who's been there before and knows firsthand what they're talking about.
So I've had the opportunity to actually work with your team in looking at the potential sale of one of my businesses versus when I actually sold my very first business without an advisor, years and years ago. And I will tell you, it was a night and day different experience. There's a lot of questions that Walker asked me that nobody was asking me when I was selling the first one, because I didn't know any better. And in hindsight, I would have loved to have had that counsel. So a tip of the hat to the team that you've assembled. So when you started this, it was because of you were helping a friend to sell, I think you said his hosting company.
Mm-hmm.
Did you consciously decide way back then that, hey, I'm going to be focused on online businesses for the founding of Quiet Light? And if you did, was it just because you had experience there and you knew that there was kind of a gap in the market, or was there anything more to it?
No, it's what I knew and what I know. I mean, I've been in the online world since 1998, and I started Quiet Light Brokerage in 2007. At the time, I mean, when I looked at what do I know, I don't know restaurants, I don't know gas stations. That's not anything I was really interested in either. The online space, and how do you assess, especially back then, how do you assess the SEO value of a website, and how does that play into its future? How do you really judge whether or not this is a business or a website that's going to continue on in the future? And that's a big part of this process of, does your business have value, is determining what is it going to do in the future, and how do you critically analyze these things, both from a buyer perspective, but also as an advisor, and also as a business owner yourself. If I'm trying to help somebody exit, right, how do you critically analyze that business? So I focus on the online space because A, it's big enough, right? There's enough businesses in here to definitely keep us very, very busy, and it does keep us very, very busy. And B, that's really what we know. Being able to evaluate an online business is unique. Just as, I've talked to an advisor who specializes in gas stations. And you know what? That is a very specific field as well. You have to understand how to do soil sampling and environmental studies and everything else. So when you get into this world of M&A, you do end up having specializations for that reason, because just the way that you look at these businesses and where to look is really important. Frankly, even within the online space, our criteria and how we judge a SaaS business versus an e-commerce business built on Shopify versus an e-commerce business built on Amazon versus a content business, those are all different types of valuations. And I'm going to ask much different questions for each of those types of businesses.
What size of companies do you normally find end up being clients?
Yeah, our average deal size, so the actual sale value, our average deal size is around $1.5 million. The low end of what we would typically transact would be around $100,000. We see a quick drop off underneath, say 200,000. So you don't see a lot underneath that. The top end of what we're doing is in the low to mid 8-figure range. We don't have a ton of volume in there. We have decent volume in the low 8-figure range. But again, 1.5 to 2 million is our average deal value right now. By perspective, for revenue, that's going to be about 1 times revenue for a lot of businesses, or for your EBITDA, you're looking at EBITDAs of 500,000 up to about $2 or $3 million for most of what we're working with.
Okay. Now we're going to put our buyer hat on here for the next little bit of our conversation. Do you think that it is better for someone to build or to buy? And what are your reasons for both sides of that argument?
Yeah, the build versus buy argument. Yeah. And you get this a lot from a buyer's perspective, right? Because you take a look at a business and you see what somebody's doing and you're thinking, I could do that, right? There aren't that many moving parts. The fact is, it's usually harder than we think. This is what I said when I started Quiet Light Brokerage. I said I could do this. And luckily, there weren't a lot of people in this space. So it was possible for me to start this and gain some foothold while we were learning. I think buying versus building depends a lot on A, your personality, and B, what your goals are. What's the benefit to buying? Well, the benefit to buying is you're buying something existing that's gone through the growth pains initially. You know that there's going to be a product market fit. You know that there's clients that are looking for this particular product, whatever it may be. And there's some level of introduction and adoption in the marketplace, right? So you really take out this kind of ramp up period that you see with startups. And with a startup business, despite how clear your path may be to getting the startup, you're still making an upfront investment in that startup that you have to wait to be able to get that payback on. Even let's say like a content site, and you want to start up, let's say a finance content website that's going to focus on credit card points. Well, you need to source that content. You need to have it written. You need to have it edited. You need designs. You need all these things, and it's going to take you 6, 9, 12 months to really get to the point where you can see an ROI. So the benefit of buying is immediate ROI. You're buying something established. You're buying something that somebody else has gone through those growth pains. They've figured out what works, at least for them, and you can build on top of that. And that's a really good place to be. I don't want to say though.
You could also be buying somebody's sick dog.
You could be buying somebody's sick dog, and that's hopefully part of the process we are going to look at Quiet Light, right? Is this a sick dog? I'm not going to list something that's really sick and bound to die. That would be bad, and certainly go against our ethos. And I think it's important for anyone who even would think about buying. What's one person's sick dog could be somebody else's greyhound, right? And you have to understand what you're good at, right? Most people sell businesses that have a few warts on them here or there. They're the warts that they were comfortable living with. So identify what those are and identify whether or not you can mitigate those, right? Are those going to be a problem? As with anything, I mean, there's risk. A startup, you're trying to bring a dog to life. Yeah. So, all of this stuff does have its risk. On a startup side, I think there's benefits to starting up as well. And I wouldn't want to say don't do it because, first of all, I think your return on investment can be greater. You get to customize a business. I have a business that I'm running right now that I acquired. And I've been spending the last 2 years trying to fix it, right? Trying to fix certain things. And I haven't got the same traction that I was hoping to get right away. It was a little bit more difficult than I thought because a lot of the business wasn't mine. And so I didn't have the same ownership of it personally. So I think there's benefits on both sides of this. A lot depends on your personality. A lot depends on what your goals are. If you're looking for something that you can get into, is cash flowing, and is proven to a certain extent, buying is a great option and frankly the preferred option. If you're trying to be disruptive, starting is the way to go, in my opinion. Or if you see an opportunity that just isn't out there yet, obviously starting makes a lot of sense.
So if I am your brother, I want to get into the e-commerce physical products business, you are going to tell me to buy rather than build.
Not necessarily. I mean, it depends what you want to do and depends on your skill set. Let's say that you're a great product designer, right? And that's your skill set. It might be better for you to go out to do this on your own. Now there's risk in that. There's risk that you could design a product, source it, bring it in, and then have nobody buy it. I would say explore your options is what I would actually say, right? Explore your options. Don't rule out buying. I think a lot depends on when do you want that ROI, when you want to start getting paid back. I think that's one of the strongest arguments to buying versus building.
And I like me a good ROI.
Most of us do.
So beautiful segue to the next thing that I wanted to ask you, and that is, you guys obviously see a lot of buyers. Who may be clients or maybe, bought before you came along or what have you. So what are some of the most common mistakes that you see buyers making when they're searching for their first company to buy?
Boy, I could cover a lot of things here. I'm going to cover a few things. One, first of all, this isn't really even about their approach or mistakes that they're making in terms of how they're searching. It's more of their approach to the sellers. We preach this pretty heavily at Quiet Light, and that is be likable. Joe, my business partner, tells a story when he was selling his business through Quiet Light. So he was a client before he came on as an advisor, now as a business partner. But as he was selling his business, he had a buyer come on and on a call, and they were reviewing the business. And then the buyer proceeded towards the end of the call to tell him everything that was wrong with the business. And what that buyer was trying to do was explain why he couldn't pay a premium price. But what he actually did in Joe's mind was, Joe's thinking, well, why in the heck do you want to buy this business in the first place? You're just insulting what I built and telling me how terrible of a business person I am. That guy obviously didn't win that deal, right? So being likable makes a difference. You mentioned Walker. I use Walker as an example because he bought a business through me before he came on as an advisor with Quiet Light. And Walker, during the process of buying this business, behaved in such a manner that won him a deal just based on being a little extra considerate than anybody else. At the end of one of our discovery calls, before he put in an offer, he took the time to thank the seller for A, their time, and B, even entertaining his time to potentially buy their business. That made such a difference in that relationship and made my client in that situation want to sell to him because here's somebody who respected what they built. So first things first, it's very, very simple, but be a nice person. Understand that when you're going into a transaction, you're buying something that somebody else has built, right? And put in a lot of time, risk a lot of money, and is probably pretty proud of, and they should be pretty proud of that, right? So be respectful of that. More practically, though, the mistakes that we see would either be being way too generic in what you're looking for, or not having any criteria of what you're looking for, or being too hyper-specific in what you're looking for. On the front side, being too generic. I get calls from people sometimes saying, hey, I'm thinking about buying an online business. Do you have any advice? Well, okay, what type of online business are you thinking about buying? Well, I don't really know. Okay, well, this is a place to start because running a SaaS business is nothing like running an Amazon business, which is nothing like running a content business. What are you good at? What are your skills? What makes you scared in the online world versus feeling really comfortable? Are you comfortable working in code? Are you really comfortable running logistics? Having a little bit of a self-assessment to say, where are my strengths? What am I good at? And what do I want to do on a day-to-day basis? That's a really good place to start. If you're an operations guy, I had a client who told me once he had a physical products business. He had a warehouse, and he made this big move where he went from an 8,000 square foot warehouse to a 22,000 square foot warehouse. And he told me, he said, I had no more fun in my business career planning out the move from that smaller warehouse to a larger warehouse. Me personally, I would rather pluck my eyeballs out. It sounds awful. Like I don't want, the logistics of moving a warehouse, no, thank you. But he wanted to do it. He liked it. He liked that sort of thing. That was what he enjoyed. Good for him. For him, if he was buying, and he's not, but if he was buying, I would tell him, you want to find something that's a logistical nightmare, take it and fix it. That's where you're going to do really, really well. So that's one side. The flip side is the too specific type of buyer. The guy that comes in and says, I'm looking for a business in the medical equipment space. We don't want supplements, but want medical equipment. The asking price has to be less than 2.8, has to be growing for the past 5 years, must have intellectual property protection, yada, yada, yada. Mm-hmm. I get it. You have your hit list criteria. You should. But when you get too specific, you're not going to find a deal because it's really, really hard to get a deal that matches that specific criteria. And B, if your criteria is really specific, especially on price, and you're looking for certain things, understand that when we release a new business for sale at Quiet Light, we're getting 150 inquiries within a few days, right? So there's a lot of people competing for that. And if your criteria specifically is something like it's been growing for the past 5 years and has a multiple of less than 3 on the earnings, there's a lot of people that are going to be wanting that exact same business. And market forces are what market forces are. And that's going to come into play. So those would be the 3 things. Be nice, know what you want, but don't be so specific that you put yourself in a shoebox.
Okay, so now our buyer is one of those 150 people that's inquiring about a business. So it's a very competitive situation. It's a very desirable business. Are there specific tactics, aside from what you've just explained, that buyer can do to help make themselves stand out from the flock of other buyers?
Well, again, I'll double down on the be nice and be considerate. Again, you don't have to sit there and flatter somebody to, like, oh, I love the way you look. That sweater is just awesome. I mean, you don't have to get to that point, right? But just being considerate of them, letting them know what your intentions are. You don't have to tell them all of your plans, but letting them know your background, trying to connect with them personally to some extent, and then letting them know what you're going to do with the business afterwards as well, and letting them know, hey, I've got, even if I don't buy the business or you don't decide to sell it for some reason, if you need anything, I'm here to help you out. That's something that can go a long, long ways. Constructing the offer. That's another area where you can definitely stand out, right? Obviously, money plays the biggest role in this. The people that offer the most value tend to get the majority of the deals done, but offer structure makes a big difference. For better or worse, and there's definitely an argument to make that this is for worse, but people selling their business don't want to see a complex deal, right? So if sometimes we get these offers where, let's say somebody's asking $2 million for the business, a buyer might come in and say, well, I'll offer $1 million up front, and then we'll do $500,000 in a note with a 5-year balloon payment of this much, and then we're going to have an earnout component on top of that. There's a lot of moving parts that are going on here, and the seller's looking at this thinking, I just want to cash out and be done. Okay, that's the mentality 95% of sellers have. I want to cash out. I want to be done. I'm ready to move on, right? I'm ready to move on, do something different with my life. They're entrepreneurs. They want to do something different. That doesn't mean that you have to completely throw out earnouts. It doesn't mean you have to completely throw out financing. There's good reasons from a buyer's perspective to do those, but do it within reason. Keep it simple and keep it understandable and easily digestible. And also understand that that comes with a cost, right? If you're going to ask for owner financing, if you're going to ask for performance-based financing, where the payouts are dependent on your job running the business, understand that there should be a little bit of a premium for the seller in that situation.
Is it okay? Sorry to interrupt you, but is it okay so let's say it's a competitive situation. You needed to get an LOI in because you want to get picked to be the buyer, to go into due diligence. And you've basically said, here's my offering price, but you haven't spelled out terms. Is it okay to, once you're in due diligence, to say, well, I'd actually like a note, or I'd like this, or I'd like that, or will sellers consider that to be a bit deceptive and then turn sour on you because they feel as though you tricked them into getting into due diligence?
Yeah, great question. Great question. Yes, they will completely consider that to be a little bit deceptive. And B, the broker will as well. The advisor will as well. And that doesn't play well, right? So going back to the fact that we have 150 inquiries plus per listing that we put out, if we're getting multiple offers, our client is asking us, do you have any insight on any of these people, right? And if we've closed a deal with somebody and they've been good actors through due diligence, that plays. And that, I'm going to disclose, hey, I've worked with this guy before. He closes deals. He's very good. We trust him. I would give him an approval. This other buyer, it's a bit of a disadvantage. They're new, but they're acting, they're doing everything right now, but they are new. I don't have as much of a book on them. These are some of the realities as a buyer that can be difficult breaking in. On the LOI note, you don't put in an LOI unless you want that business, right? Most advisors, especially at Quiet Light, we will do everything in our power to make sure that you get all the information you need to make a good decision before placing an LOI. I don't want an LOI if you don't know what you're going to do. The purpose of an LOI, letter of intent, says my intent is to purchase this business, assuming or dependent on due diligence, which means everything is verified, that it's accurate and complete.
Mm-hmm.
If everything's accurate and complete, the deal should happen. If you're still in your discovery stage, figuring out, do I want to do this? You shouldn't be putting in an LOI. That means you're going to miss out on some deals. The best buyers out there know how to move quickly because they know exactly what they want, so they can identify that very, very quickly. That comes with experience. So one of the things I advise buyers, take some time. Understand that looking for that deal, it's going to take some time. Look at a lot of deals, offer feedback, and learn what you want.
Okay. So now we're going to transition and talk about negotiation and closing. And you've already answered my first question. What's the first, when a buyer finds someone they like, what's the first step? And the first step, of course, is an LOI. So once the LOI has been issued, and if they're accepted and they're going to go into due diligence, what, in terms of expectations, typically how long does due diligence last?
Yeah, it depends on the size of the business and the nature of the business. 30 days would be kind of the average, but if it's a more complex business, 60 days is not unheard of. If you're looking at a high 7, low 8-figure business, getting upwards of 90 days makes sense because you're typically having outside firms come in, maybe do a quality of earnings report or something like that, right? So the duration, I think for most people that are looking in the 6-figure to low 7-figure range, you should be looking at a 30-day due diligence approximately for most online businesses. Okay. As far as the expectations, you wanted to cover that?
Well, I'll just keep running through the questions that I want to cover off. So. Yeah. I'm assuming that for buyers who haven't bought before, you have some type of due diligence process that you're going to guide them through.
Well, due diligence is primarily the responsibility of the buyer. Now, I can give some tips, but and let me back up. Before I put something out to market, before any of us would put something out to market, we've done some level of due diligence at Quiet Light. We're not going to put something out that I don't think is going to survive due diligence. It would be a huge waste of my time to do so. But it's not as deep of a due diligence as you need to do as a buyer, right? As a buyer, you need to verify that the books that you're looking at are accurate and complete, which means getting access to bank statements and credit card statements, merchant statements, et cetera, verifying a lot of this and backing into a lot of the financial statements that you've seen. You also have to make sure things are being fully represented. Sometimes people forget things, and it's honest mistakes. We've had that happen. These are important things to be asking. There are companies that will help you through the due diligence process, especially if you're a first-time buyer, and I would highly recommend using some of those companies. Centurica comes to mind, top of mind. They're a good company. They help with a lot of the due diligence processes. But a lot of it is common sense as well, right? Take a look at what was represented and then just ask as many questions as possible. We do have some kind of rote due diligence checklist that we can hand over for people as well. But I want to be careful. I don't want anyone to think that they can rely on this as being all you need to do. You should really make sure that you're doing a full and thorough due diligence. The fact is, buying any business, buying any investment like this is risky. And so you have to do your homework and make sure that you're looking at everything in depth. And I would hate to find out that somebody missed a step and it worked out poorly for them. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think it was Walker who shared with me a story of someone who bought a business. And one of the areas where they made a mistake in due diligence was on payables. Instead of contacting the suppliers of the business to see what the payables balance was, they looked at the financials and the financials showed no payables, yet there was a desk drawer filled with unpaid invoices, which the new buyer then had to pay. So that was a $50,000 surprise that came their way.
Yeah, I ran into that when I bought a business as well. And it was a situation where the supplier was actually trying to collect from the previous buyer. Right. So I was in this weird situation. I still needed my seller to continue to train me. So I didn't want to betray them. Right? It was a bad spot to be in. But yes, I mean, that's a perfect example of what you need to do.
So what are some of the other mistakes that you've seen buyers make? If you can think of, 2 or 3 doozies, those are great stories and great learning opportunities.
Well, those are very specific. I don't have a specific example like that, but the number one mistake I see in due diligence is somebody pitching, asking or requesting a solution to something they want to see and thinking that it has to be that way, where we see heads butting. would be a buyer coming in and saying, okay, I need you to give me access to this. And the seller saying, no way, no how. I'm not giving you access to that. That's very, very private. And now the buyer's thinking, well, I need access to this. But no one's asking why, right? Why do you need access for it? When you ask that question, sometimes you find out, well, I need access so that I can verify X, right? And then once you hear that, you can say, okay, you need to verify X. That's totally reasonable. Here's another way we can go about doing it, right? So I would say a couple of mistakes. One would be that, right? Don't lock yourself into a solution. Understand the why for what you're asking for. Secondly, order your requests in the order of what's going to be least sensitive to most sensitive, right? So this is, again, having courtesy and respect for that seller and their property. Don't go in from day one saying, well, I need to talk to your clients to make sure that everything is above board, because nobody wants you to talk to their clients until they're really sure you're going to do the deal. Do your financial due diligence first. Maybe give them a heads up and say, look, I will want to be speaking to some of your clients. Totally happy on doing that in week 3 once we've cleared off items 1 through 25 off the due diligence list. We can put that towards the end. So order it in the right way as well. So those are 2 things that I would definitely recommend.
Are you familiar with the invested time principle?
No.
You probably are, just not by that name. So I read it and I wish I could remember the name of the book. How to Negotiate Anything, I think is what it was. And I don't remember the author. But the invested time principle, as explained in the book, was quite simple. The longer 2 parties are negotiating for an outcome, the more likely it is that both parties want to achieve that outcome. So they feel as though they got an investment, a return on the investment of their time. So the reason that popped into my mind is you're talking about your scale of least sensitive information that you're asking for. Ask for that in the beginning when it's easy. Most sensitive information that you're asking for, ask for that further on down the road, because the invested time principle is then more in your favor and you're more likely to get the information.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, I've said this for a long time. Like, offers from a buyer are usually made based off the metrics, but a deal is actually completed based on trust, right? And this due diligence process is about verifying what you're seeing, but it's also developing a relationship of trust with the seller, and the seller developing trust with you. So on day 1, I've had so many instances of people saying at the very beginning, there's no way I'm going to be able to give him this. And then they meet in person, they go over a few things, they have a couple meetings, and then, you know what, he's a good guy, I'm comfortable with it. Like, I'm okay with this now, because they've developed a relationship, they're building that trust. So absolutely, the invested time principle, I think another aspect of it would be, it helps you build that relationship, which is crucial.
So a variation on an earlier question of mine about what terms and so forth in due diligence, what are some of the items that are okay to try and renegotiate in the due diligence period without coming across as being a dick or deceptive or what have you?
Yeah, first of all, renegotiations are completely legitimate if you find material misrepresentations or mistakes, right? So this happens from time to time. Somebody forgets the credit card that they paid for advertising with on their financial statements, and your numbers have swung by $50,000. Totally makes sense to renegotiate at that point, and to do so in a way that is fair to the client, right? So not saying, hey, you made this mistake, I'm going to knock off a disproportionate amount of money off the purchase price. That would not be legitimate to do. There's a lot of elements that at the LOI stage simply are not negotiated and can be negotiated or should be negotiated later on, such as the scope of a non-compete agreement or the term of a non-compete agreement. So these are things that you can definitely introduce later on as far as here's what I'm looking for. Now, I would just caution you, though, if you're going to be asking for anything extraordinary, have it be set up front, right? What kills deals are surprises. And it can be a completely valid surprise. It can be a completely valid request. But if somebody's surprised by it, both on the buy side and on the sell side, it can cause problems. On the sell side, I know, non-competes would be a great example. If I know that somebody is going to be working in an industry that's sort of a neighbor to what they're selling, my advice is always tell them on day 1 that you're planning to do this. And when they do, I don't ever have a problem with it. Where I have a problem with it is when we're two days away from closing and the buyer finds out, whoa, they're going to be in this industry? They didn't tell me that. Why didn't they tell me that? They should have told me that. And now it looks like a much different issue to them. So just disclose early. But as far as what can be renegotiated, hopefully not much. If you have cause, then it makes sense and approach that, and just understand renegotiations. Depending on how the rest of the deal has gone, it can be dicey to do. So do so cautiously.
I had read articles about, I don't know if the term vulture buyer is the correct term, but maybe predatory buyer, where buyers will make an initial high offer to tie somebody up in due diligence and systematically grind them down over a period of 2, 3, 4, 5 months. And I'm guessing this probably is not happening in your space. Maybe it's happening with bigger deals where there aren't as many buyers because you've got this flood of buyers. Would that be accurate to say?
It doesn't happen because we protect against that. Yes, that happens, and I know some buyers do that. And this is where, look, if it were to happen with one of our clients, that buyer would not have a very good shot of getting any other deal with us.
Okay.
So, I mean, that's just if somebody is a bad player during due diligence and we think that they are not acting in good faith, they're going to have a hard time getting another deal. It's not an official blacklist or anything like that, but there are notes as to how people behaved, and we can look back at that. And I would be not doing my job if I didn't warn a client, hey, this guy had it, in our last deal renegotiated without reason. And look, we've had people renegotiate with reason and the deal's fallen apart. And we've made sure to note he renegotiated, but it was completely valid. If there's a valid reason to renegotiate, we get it. But if somebody is doing this kind of predatory practice, and yes, people do that, it's not welcome. And you might get a few deals done as a buyer that way, and you might save a few bucks. It's going to come back against you. Your deal flow is going to dry up very, very quickly.
Okay. What percentage of your buyers are bringing SBA loans to the table as a part of their financing package, and how much less desirable or attractive does that make them as the buyer, given that the SBA takes a little bit of time to fund the loan and that slows the deal down?
Yeah, great question. SBA was non-existent like 4 years ago, maybe 5 years ago. You just didn't see SBA deals being done. Now it's around 60% of our deals are financed through SBA. We are seeing right now a bit of a tightening in the SBA markets. Banks, especially in the e-commerce space, banks have quotas for types of businesses that they're going to provide loans for, especially through SBA. And we are seeing a little bit of a tightening of some of those criteria that they're looking for. Is it more or less desirable? It depends on the business, right? I mean, there are some cases where I would question a business's SBA eligibility. Obviously, the process is not desirable. SBA lenders will tell you that they can get it done in 30 to 45 days. I've never seen it happen that way. It's typically 60 to 90 days is what you're really looking at. And it is a lot more paperwork. The flip side of it from a sell side is you can often get more money from it. It restricts the creativity of the deals. So you can't like have an employment agreement after. You can't do earnouts in an SBA deal. So from a seller standpoint, you get cash up front or cash basically guaranteed. It's a good deal that way. So is it more or less desirable? I'd say slightly less desirable, but I wouldn't let that discourage people. We have a case study in which we had a cash buyer lose out to an SBA buyer on a pretty significant size deal. Right, and the offers were not substantially different. In fact, I think they were pretty much the same. The difference between the two, the buyer was nice.
Really?
Connected.
Wow.
Yeah,
that's profound. So setting aside SBA, then what would be some other types of common financing vehicles?
Yeah, there's really kind of a dearth of it. We need more financing options out there. There are some groups out there that are doing hard money loans or short-term sort of bridge loans. I know of a product right now, which is a interest-only bridge loan with the idea of rolling over to an SBA loan within a couple of years. We have seen some conventional loans being done. It's not common, but you need to have a very, very well-qualified buyer who has a phenomenal relationship with a bank in order to do that. And then funds would be the last thing that we're seeing. So these micro funds where people are building up, funds of $5 to $10, maybe $15 million, and they're deploying those funds into a roll-up strategy. That's primarily what we're seeing. There are some companies at the smaller end, lower end that are doing funding, but I don't have any experience with them.
The interest-only bridge loan, is there a company name that comes to mind that I can include in the show notes?
Sure, ecommercelending.com.
Okay. Lending. Sorry, I'm not typing faster, folks. Okay. Now I want to, actually one more question regarding due diligence. So we need to talk about closing and what buyers should expect in the, 4 to 6 weeks after closing. Is it, because I would imagine there are things there that can go wrong or upset people or what have you.
Yeah. I mean, the stuff that can go wrong would B, sales not are what you're looking for. I mean, that's that's going to be the number.
That'd be an obvious
one thing, and yeah, well, you know, Murphy's Law sort of plays a role there, and often kind of rears its ugly head where you have a horrible sales period after you buy a business. Here's what you should expect after the closing, right? During the closing, you should gain access to all of the assets within that business, and you should have them completely under your control. After that's done and the money is flowing into your accounts, you should have the seller available to train you and be able to ask questions of them and really understand the business and the ins and outs of it over those next 30 days. You should be able to rely on them less and less over that time. Where people run into problems is they learn something that maybe they didn't look at before. The example of the payables would obviously be a really nasty surprise. The only other thing that I would bring up would be not understanding how to read financial statements in the buy-in process and then seeing what a business actually looks like from a cash perspective later on. And I think this sounds so basic, but just understand that a profit and loss statement is not necessarily a statement of how the cash is flowing in and out of the business, right? It's a pretty basic thing to understand. Understand this with a SaaS business, understand this with an e-commerce business, and get a sense for how is this money actually going to flow in and out of my account. If you feel pretty comfortable with financial statements, you're going to hear that and say, well, yes, of course. But there are people out there that are not. They look at a P&L or an income statement, and they think that is the money that's flowing in and out. Study up on that, just a little bit. Study up on that, and understand what you're looking at.
You mean it's not the balance sheet that shows the money that's flowing in and out?
There's a lot of documents that are not understood by us entrepreneurs, and we should understand them. I say this when I give talks at conferences, right? Because so many of online entrepreneurs are data geeks. We love our data. Mm-hmm. And we'll pour over it. And then we have this thing called our financial books, which we completely ignore.
Yeah.
But is a whole set of data that has hundreds of years of history in being developed to be really insightful into the health of your business. Mm-hmm. But how many of us actually know how to read a balance sheet or know what a statement of cash flow is compared to an income statement? And when I ask this question at conferences, I ask people, raise your hand if you know the difference between cash basis and accrual basis accounting. And I get maybe about 30% of the hands definitely up. They know it. And then maybe, 10% kind of waving, sort of. And then the rest don't know. It's a pretty basic difference. Take the time to take the Udemy course or something and learn. You don't have to be an accountant. Just know the basics of what you're looking at.
Can you tell us the difference in less than 60 seconds?
Sure. Cash basis is P&Ls that are represented based on when money comes in or leaves the business. Accrual is when expenses or income is earned or incurred. So the example would be if I paid in advance for my web hosting on a cash basis book, I would show the expense in one big month. So all out, right? Accrual, I would show that over a 12-month period. Here's a hint: accrual is the better way, right? And now you might hear that and say, "Well, I want to know about the cash." They both have value. They're both useful to look at, but you should be keeping your books on accrual basis. If you're using software such as Xero or QuickBooks, if you're recording it on accrual basis, you can always switch back to a cash basis and see it from a money flow standpoint. So that's the trick. Looking at accrual basis is like looking at a 3-dimensional picture versus a 2-dimensional picture. That's more than 10 seconds.
It was, but that's fine. All inventory businesses, I would imagine, need to be on an accrual basis.
Absolutely. And SaaS businesses as well.
Yep. Okay.
Yep.
All right, we are now going to transition into the last segment of our time together, and that is let's make it about the seller for a change. We've been talking about the buyer, and there's a whole lot of stuff that sellers need to consider when they're looking at exiting their business. Let's start off with a seller comes to you and says, I'm thinking of selling, but they don't really know when. How do you help them to make the decision about when is the right time to sell a business, assuming that, it's not an external factor like I'm dying, or, we got a divorce, or, something like that, that just is a drop dead.
Right. And those actually do come up more often than not. My first question would be why. Why are you selling? Why do you want to sell? Is it a feather in the cap? If so, okay, let's find out what feather, what number you want on that feather. Like, is it $1 million? Do you want to say I exited at $1 million, or 5 million or 10 million? And then my next question, if it was just that, would be rethink it. I don't think selling just for a feather in the cap is a great reason, personally.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, owning a business is better than selling a business. And look, I make my money on this, so I know that I'm talking about against my own clients. That eventually I hope will come over to me. But owning a business is better than selling a business. If it was the other way around, no one would want to buy your business, right? It's a buyable asset because it's desirable to own. Financially speaking, it's just better if you have an income producing property. You have the asset value of the business, which is part of your net worth, plus you have the income that's producing. So it's better to own it. So first, why are you selling? And then from there, you can kind of work backwards, right? To find out. Let's say the reason is, well, I have this other idea I want to do. I want to move on to that. Okay, well then let's figure out what you need to do to get to this other idea, right? Do you need a certain amount of cash in the bank? And then we can work backwards again to say, well, what do you need to do to get up to that valuation point? So these are all things to really look at. I'm working with a client right now who told me, look, Mark, I started this business and I said from day one, the day I have to hire somebody or move to a bigger warehouse, I'm selling because I don't want to do it. To me, totally legit. Right? There are people out there that say, I want to start. I don't want to have employees. In fact, I have a number of clients where that's where their motive is. They've had employees in the past. They don't want to grow to that size. So then that becomes your exit point, right? At what point do you think you need to take on an employee if that's what you want to avoid?
Will you call me the next time you get a deal like that, especially if it's an e-commerce brand I can buy?
Yeah, I definitely will. Yeah, we have one that's under offer right now. That's exactly that. And it's a great business. And the guy's like, look, I know I'm leaving money on the table, but I don't want to move warehouses. I want to take some time off, and I don't want to babysit people. I'm bad with people.
Is there an accepted LOI on that deal?
There is an accepted LOI. Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry. I had another situation years ago that was the same thing where it was a guy, he built up a business. I built it up for, I think it started like at 30,000 a year. And then when I took it over, representative was doing about $500,000 per year. And I asked him, like, why are you selling this thing? Like, you're working with your son and it's great. He's like, well, because right now I'm fulfilling inventory from my garage with my son. It's great. We're continuing to grow. I have no more space in my garage. My son and I are spending all our time doing this. I don't want to bring somebody else on. Totally legit reason. So yeah, again, figure out the reason first, and then we can work backwards from there. If there's a number that we have to hit, that also will be something that we can work backwards from. But I would really discourage this attitude of when is the right time to sell my business from a financial standpoint. The answer is probably there isn't, right? From a financial standpoint alone, it's going to be better for you to own that thing for a long time.
What is the most common reason that you see sellers selling for? Because from the buyer's perspective, I think a lot of folks might think, well, there's got to be something wrong with the business. That's why they're selling it, that, it's not good anymore. But as you just explained with the son in the garage and so forth, I mean, that had nothing to do with the health of the business. So what do you see most commonly?
Yeah, burnout would be the number one reason that I see, and entrepreneurs' shiny object syndrome. Right? We go out there and what's that? It's having a conversation. Really, squirrel.
Says the guy that owns 3 companies.
yeah. And I can tell you, the last one I bought was exactly that. It was shiny object syndrome, and me being a little bit burnt out with the day-to-day grind. And I use it for that to this day, right? Like if I get kind of burnt out on Quiet Light stuff, I kind of go over and work on the other business for a little bit, and it does help. So burnout. I
was actually talking about me.
Well, you?
Yeah, I have 3, and I wonder sometimes, what the hell am I doing?
It's tough to own 3 businesses, but it comes from that, right?
Yeah.
So I think, why are you selling? Frankly, I think it's the most overrated question. Because if somebody really has a sick business, they're not going to tell you.
No.
And then second of all, I don't think most people really know. When I sold my first business, I couldn't have told you one good reason. I just knew it was time. That was really all it came down to. I knew it was time. I was done. I wasn't going to continue on. It was as simple as that.
All right. So I've decided I'm going to sell. I got to get ready. What does that look like? Because I can't just say decide today and sell tomorrow. There's got to be something that happens between those two milestones.
Yeah, ideally you've talked to us at least a year in advance, right? Because we like to say, don't decide to sell, plan to sell. If you've already heard me say it's better for you to hang on to your business than to sell it. That said, you should know the value of your business today, and you should know what's driving its value today, even if you never want to sell it. My business partner, Joe, does a great exercise at conferences where he asks people to raise their hands and says, who here knows how much money they have in their checking account? And everyone raises their hands. He goes, how much in retirement? How much their home is worth? How much know approximately what their car is worth? Right? And it says, how many of you know how much your business is worth? And hands drop. But the fact is, it's probably your most valuable asset. If not your most valuable, one of your most valuable assets. Do you know what it's worth? Do you know what's driving its value? Really, really key, important questions. So what do? You want to sell someday. You decide, I do want to exit someday, or I at least want to be prepared. First of all, find out where the value is, find out what's driving the value, find out what's holding it back. That'll give you the time to hopefully put in place an exit plan where you can implement changes to increase the value. Once you know those things, an exit strategy really just writes itself. Let's say you're ready to go now, though. You've executed a strategy, or something else happens and you do have to decide to sell. From there, it's still a matter of getting that valuation done, understanding where the market's at, getting a realistic sense for what can I expect for my business, and then going through, frankly, a lot of questions. When we prepare a business for sale, we're looking for several years of financial records. We're going to do our own analysis on that. We're looking for ancillary reports. If you're like in an Amazon business, we're going to be looking for some of those reports. If you're SaaS, we need some SaaSy metrics, the typical ones that we would typically look for. And then we're going to ask you a gazillion written questions, and you're going to wonder what the point of it is. Our client interviews, our written interviews, can be anywhere from 80 questions to 120 questions in length, and they take a day to fill out. And people hate us by the end, but it's super effective and super useful. The whole thing takes about a week to do. Then we can go to market at that point once we understand where the value is, and you're on board with understanding where the value is and what we can expect from the market. And that's really what that exercise is, right? Are we going to have a feeding frenzy for your business, or should we expect that people are going to want you to hold some paper on this? These are important questions to know before you go into the actual sales process, so that you can kind of set your expectations.
What percentage of the sellers that come to you have thoroughly documented their business processes, and how important is that when preparing for sale?
Increasingly, we're seeing more and more people document it, which is good. I think people are hearing some of the influencers like yourself who would say, you should put together standard operating procedures. There's benefits to doing so. Not enough do. It does have a positive impact. We talk about, within Quiet Light, we talk about the 4 pillars of value for our business, which are risk, growth, transferability, and documentation. Risk and growth are the 2 big ones, right? Risk is going to decrease the value of your business. Growth is going to increase the value of your business. Transferability and documentations are a subset of risk, right? So how easy for somebody else to run your business from day one? Do you have processes in place? Do you have tons of institutional knowledge that's going out the door when you sell the business? That makes it less transferable. That increases the risk for a buyer. If you have processes documented, and your company even diagrammed out organizationally, that helps the transferability of the business. It also has a psychological effect on a buyer. If a buyer sees all of your items completely documented, and they see that you've taken the time to do this, they're going to know that you have your stuff together, right? One of the scariest things about buying a business is you don't know what you don't know. And do you trust that person that's selling to tell you everything, or to even know what you should know? Well, if you have all of your stuff documented and you can go into this saying, look, on the day of closing, I have everything in a LastPass account, so you're going to get all my passwords with one password. I have all of my documents uploaded to a Google Drive or a Dropbox folder. I've got everything in these videos set together. You're going to get this handbook with everything. wow, that lets me know that this person's planned for this. They have all their stuff together, and there's going to be an easy transition there. And if they did forget something, it's not going to be that big of a deal. We'll be able to get it together. So it has a real impact on the value of a business.
Or they also could put all of their business processes in a little software application called Flowster.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. Great. That's an awesome plug. Way to segue that. I love it.
Well, it's my own show, so I figured I'm allowed to be my own sponsor too, right?
Right. Totally allowed to do that. No, it's hey, I played around with it. It's great. It'd be a great application to do that in.
All right. So, in terms of value for the third and the fourth pillar, transferability and documentation, all else being equal, how much of a bump could someone get in valuation? Are they going to get an extra 0.1 or 0.2x, or what's it going to look like, do you think?
It becomes difficult to isolate these things and say that they're going to have, this much and that much. It's not like just plus and minuses, right? So, because let's say all things being equal, you have things really kind of documented there. Yeah, maybe 0.1, 0.2, maybe 0.3%. But there's other things in there that are really going to override it.
Mm-hmm.
If your business is down 50% year over year, I don't care how well you've documented the business. Yeah. It's going to be a problem to sell. If you're growing, rapidly, then that's going to really have upward pressure. Where we see the documentation really have a problem in evaluation is really subtracting from a business's otherwise really potential value. And so that's where I would say get that right. You don't want to be discounted. I've had businesses, and frankly, there's a lot of businesses out there like this. They're poorly documented from a financial standpoint. And if you're poorly documented from a financial standpoint, you might just be unsellable. It becomes a binary issue rather than a multiple issue on the business, because you can't verify it, you can't buy it. It just becomes way too risky for most buyers.
So the penalty of not having documentation exceeds the bonus for having documentation.
Absolutely.
Another way of saying that. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. We're going to finish up on the seller segment with this question. When do you think does it make sense for the seller to consider carrying a note?
Well, I would, first of all, encourage most sellers to not discount a note right out the gate. Notes can really increase the value of your business if you're willing to carry them, because it instills a lot of faith in a buyer. That said, most sellers are going to say the same thing. I have no interest in it. Look, there's a lot of reasons to carry a note. Tax reasons would be one. On our podcast, we are having a tax specialist on, and she talks about how you can reduce your effective tax rate on the sale of business to a very low amount just by structuring a note in the right way. Right? There's some huge benefits there from carrying a note. Other than that, then your own personal financial reasons of getting more value or maybe reducing your tax burden. If your business it does come with a good amount of risk, carrying a note, especially a performance-based financing note, is a way to capture some value that a buyer might otherwise not be inclined to give you. For example, let's say that your business would be worth $1 million, but because of a high amount of risk, no one wants to give you more than $600,000 for the business. You might be able to capture that $400,000 by saying, "Look, I am willing to ride this risk with you, and let's put it out into 2 payments of $200,000 based on how things go." On the flip side, a rapidly growing business, sometimes we don't see the value captured from the typical valuation approaches in a rapidly growing company. So let's say that you're growing 200% year over year. When we do a valuation on a company, the way most buyers look at this is they're looking at the snapshot of the last 12 months. But if you're growing so rapidly that looking 10 months ago isn't really representative of what you're doing today, that's really tough to capture that value. So having a note there can also be a way of capturing value that you wouldn't otherwise see. So those would be a couple of scenarios where I think looking at a note makes sense.
And that note in that scenario would have to have some type of performance kicker or earnout or something like that, wouldn't it?
Yep, that'd be a performance kicker as well. And again, don't be afraid of performance kickers in the right situations. They can be very, very valuable. People don't want to do them because they don't know who's going to buy the business, and so they get skeptical of it from day one. Keep in mind, as a seller, due diligence is a two-way street.
Yeah.
You get to do due diligence on the buyer as well. Can they actually come through with their promises? And do you have any security against that? That's something to talk about. But don't want to discount the front end stuff. If you carry a note, you can get more money. You can also have some tax advantages. So those would be things to explore before a sale, understanding how to structure your sale the right way.
Yeah, if Microsoft came to buy my software company and part of their offer included an upside performance note, you can be damn sure I'd be taking a very close look at saying yes to that.
Yeah, and look at larger deals when you get above, let's say, $5 million, and this isn't a rule, but the higher you go up, and especially when you get into private equity and family offices and search funds and things like that, taking a note is not only expected in most cases, but you're also typically going to see a request for equity rollovers where you're taking some equity in the new company. Mm-hmm. That comes with the territory. It's not a hard and fast rule, but if you're asking only for cash, you're going to take a discount. Yeah. In that scenario. So as you grow larger, you're expected to have a little bit more of a sophisticated outlook on what you're expecting. And that's not a slight to somebody that's like, I just want cash. I get it. That's what I did when I sold my business. But again, just keep your options open.
All right. We are going to finish up with 5 quick facts. These are 5 very quick questions that only need very quick answers. So favorite business or marketing book that you, and this could be what you're reading now or, favorite of all time.
Deep Work by Cal Newport.
By who?
Cal Newport. Deep Work about the productivity, finding deep work in your day-to-day business. I wouldn't say it's my favorite of all time, but I just recently read it and loved it. It was phenomenal.
Favorite tool, online tool that you use on a pretty regular basis?
Favorite online tool? I know you want a quick answer, so I'm trying to think of what I use. Ahrefs, your sponsor.
All right. I was the one that I was thinking of. I look at that thing every single day.
I love it. I think it's one of the best research tools out there. I'm going to give a second shout out to Market Muse from an SEO planning standpoint. That they optimize existing written content. It's not the same sort of discovery research tool that Ahrefs is. They're great complementary tools.
Okay, I'll have to check that one out. I haven't used it. Maybe they should be a sponsor of my show.
Maybe they should.
Hours of work per week?
60,
which I'll define because this came up in my last interview and the entrepreneur said, well, I'm thinking when I'm in the gym. So we actually counted as gym time as hours of work. Let's quantify this further. Hours in front of your computer screen per week.
35.
Okay. Family situation, married and kids?
Married and a lot of kids.
How many do you have?
I have 7 kids.
Holy smokes, man. That is, you've got a baseball team in the making right there.
Yeah, my goal is to never mow my lawn again. So
you're well on your way.
I don't know, because they want to mow the lawn and then I hate the job that they did. So I go back and I redo it anyways. Yeah, it's been self-defeating.
Get a Roomba mower or whatever the robot mowers are.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And what do you wish your younger self knew?
How young?
25.
Okay, 25. Because if it was younger than that, I would say, watch out for that hole in the patio because that really hurt when I fell through it. 25. What?
Hey, 20 to 25.
Yeah, 20 to 25. Confidence, and it's not really a specific thing to know. Just being self-confident in your own abilities. So much of what holds you back, and at least me, has been, self-doubting and everything that comes along with that, which I think any entrepreneur knows, gets, understands. Mm-hmm. But some of us are better than others at defeating that early on, and I wish I was better at defeating it early on.
All right, folks, the company is Quiet Light Brokerage, and that's at QuietLight.com or QuietLightBrokerage.com?
QuietLightBrokerage.com. If somebody can help me find the owners of QuietLight.com, let me know. I'll pay a referral fee. I've tried, can't find them.
Really? Is it being used for anything?
No, it's just.
Doesn't that drive you nuts?
Oh my gosh!
Not even using it?
Yeah, so annoying. I would love to buy it, but can't seem to find the owners or contact them. So yeah, I'm sure your audience, somebody will be able to, right?
Do you own QuietLight.biz?
No, haven't looked into it.
Why don't you just
Now
buy
everyone's going to register it. I'm going to register after this
I
podcast so
would,
that no one else can pick it up.
yeah, and then just do a redirect, and then you can put that on your business cards. Anyway, thank you so much, Mark, for being on the show. I think it was a hugely valuable interview for both buyers and sellers, and ideally, some of the folks listening here may reach out to you at some point in the future.
Awesome. Thanks for having me on.